Okay, so it looks like we got some breaking news here coming from Bloomberg, and MSNBC was also reporting on this. It appears that there is a clear shortlist that's kind of being zeroed in on for Kamala Harris in the VP sweepstakes here. There's been a long list of people that have been kind of floated. The guys you see here, Mark Kelly, Josh Shapiro, Tim Walz, as well as other people like Bashir, as well as Roy Cooper, and just there's been many people. Even like I think Pete Buttigieg was like a serious dark horse, like random person. But I think that if she had chose Pete Buttigieg, it would have been a complete disaster, and I think her campaign would have been dead on day one if she had chose him. But it would have been really emblematic to me because I think she has really bad political instincts. So low key, like that happening, I'll kind of be like, oh, that makes sense. It's Kamala, right? But this is pretty crazy. So we've got three people now. So there was also another report that had came out from Jasmine Wright. Her report says, new VP Harris has told top advisors that she's looking for a mate who can, quote, balance the ticket, someone who's more of a governing partner and effectively someone with executive experience at the highest level. So there's a big difference between a governor and a senator, because a governor is somebody who has executive authority and is really running a country, or their own small country essentially, right? They're running a state, but it's essentially a country, kind of like this sort of just smaller jurisdiction. They have the ability to pardon, obviously, like if you're charged with like a state crime, convicted, the president of the United States can't pardon you from that. He can pardon you from federal convictions, but not from state level ones. That would be the governor, right? Because he's just a mini president, right, of his own little smaller jurisdiction. And so it's interesting because I think Kamala, she comes from a senatorial background, although she's now vice president. I don't know, I guess that would still be considered an executive, but typically it's considered usually the president, but I guess that's the executive in chief, so maybe the vice president is also considered an executive. So I kind of thought Mark Kelly, because he's a senator, would not be involved when it came down to the short list. But this is pretty interesting. So Tim Walz is very clearly the progressive person here. I think Mark Kelly is somewhere in the middle, and then Josh Shapiro is the most conservative out of the bunch. But Tim Walz is actually the most progressive guy. I even saw people were saying on Twitter today, people were like, oh man, he actually he voted against TARP, the relief plan, back when the market crashed to bail out the banks, So a lot of people are kind of really saying he really has the progressive bona fides. And he was also, Minnesota is not a swing state, obviously. I think it's like a lean blue state, I would say. But he was able to get a lot done as a Democrat, as a governor, with just a very short majority, a very small majority. And then also he's, done a good job in interviews and really calling out Republicans. And so I think he's done a good job showcasing himself. And so I think those things are paying off. And it looks like everybody else is gone. I don't think Pritzker was really super in the running, to be honest. His name was barely even mentioned. I'm surprised most about Walz being on this list. I'm not at all surprised about Kelly and Josh Shapiro. The only thing was this reporting made me a little bit confused when I saw Mark Kelly. I was like, wait, but he's a senator though. And so this is the list here. So the negative of Mark Kelly is he's not super pro-union. Union backlash has came towards him. So that's one big thing about Mark Kelly. But something I saw about Mark Kelly on Reddit, I was on Reddit scrolling, and it was like on our pics or something, and it was like this picture of him lying with his wife, Gabby Giffords, who was shot, at I think one of her campaign rallies, and everyone in the response was like, wow, he looks like such a good guy, he's such a good guy, and so you may not think that may not be a big thing for a politician or a race. But in a race where you have Donald Trump as the opposition, that could be something you could leverage. So that's something you really could leverage, kind of like the Honest Abe kind of thing. The crooked Hillary stuff worked really well. But in a situation like this, you could be like, hey, like I'm a really good person kind of thing. That would be a benefit. I personally, in my personal opinion, I think Mark Kelly should be removed from the list. He's a senator. He doesn't really have much experience. And then also the big issue is, there's a benefit here with Josh Shapiro. The big benefit is that he can actually swing the state of Pennsylvania for you. And Pennsylvania really is the swing state this time around. It seems to be more deviant numerically from Michigan and Wisconsin. And so Pennsylvania likely is going to be the swing state, not a swing state, the swing state. And I think GA is back in play as well, which is sick. But the thing here is for Mark Kelly, my issue with Mark Kelly is, what do you really bring to the table? He doesn't really bring anything to the table. He doesn't really have like these super big progressive bona fides. He's not going to bring you a state like Josh Shapiro is, which is the benefit of Josh Shapiro. And look at this. Like, this is just one poll I have. I pulled this up for you guys. But you can kind of see here this poll with Kelly in it. He's still down 2 points. Like, he's not even winning the race in Arizona here. So he's still down. So you can't even be like, oh, well, he's going to give you the state. And I personally think Arizona, maybe it's in play, but I kind of feel like Arizona is a bit of a lost cause. I mean, it's like +5, +8 Trump. This one put Trump only +3, but I don't know what the overperformance numbers were for Trump in this state. I'd have to look. But that you might need, like, in the Rust Belt states, you need like a 3 to 5 point lead because he consistently overperforms the polls by like 3 or 5 points. The question is that going to happen if he already has 49 points or 51? That's kind of the question. But so because Mark Kelly doesn't have strong numbers, and honestly, I don't even consider Arizona in the calculation anymore. I really don't care about Arizona anymore. I think the election comes down to Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. That's what it comes down to. And Nevada is also helpful too. But even if you lose any of the 3 Rust Belt states, it can be replaced via Georgia. And I think that Georgia is a turnout state. And so I think if they invest enough resources into the state and really work hard and continuously, I think they can actually win Georgia, especially with the black vote, heavy black vote. Hopefully we'll go in favor of Kamala. She's doing better than Biden was, at least prior with black voters. But I think that would have converged by the convergence theorem as we got closer to the election, right? But with Kamala, also maybe hopefully suburban white voters, white women will come out to vote. Hopefully we'll see. But so I think Georgia's back at play. The Georgia numbers aren't looking too bad. So I think Mark Kelly needs to be axed. There's the questions about the union situation as well. He doesn't really bring anything to the table, so I would just kick him out. So all you're left with from this list is Josh Shapiro and Tim Walz. Tim Walz has by far the most progressive candidate here, and so what it looks like is there's kind of this like almost like this sort of line, I guess. Like Mark Kelly somewhere in the middle, I think, and then Josh Shapiro appears to have this kind of doubts about him about Israel is what it seems to be. But it's not as clean cut as people are saying, because I saw him say that, Benjamin Netanyahu is the worst leader ever. So it's not like he's just like a clean cut, like super Zionist or whatever like that. And then there was some talks about like the situation with some like voucher programs for schools, but he ended up vetoing that when it came to his desk. So he's definitely the most conservative out of the bunch for sure, but he's not like some super conservative guy. But the real big benefit of him is this is the same pollster actually as the one. This is the exact same pollster just as the one who did the Arizona poll here. So what they end up saying for Josh Shapiro here, you can see this is the PPP poll. It says Shapiro 47, Trump 43, Shapiro +4. And if you look at this, like this number, this one poll alone, it's hard to realize how insane this number is, +4, because that's like a +8 swing versus almost any of these. Some of these are just redonkulous with these like Biden numbers. Even like this Trump +2 for Harris, like that's a +6 swing. The thing is, if you're tied in these states, like if you're tied in this race, like this one says even or says Harris +1, you're not really winning the race. And look at this. Oh my God, this is a new poll. Shapiro's +10. Wow. This just got added. I didn't even see this one. So this is the Fox News poll. Shapiro's +10. This is fucking redonkulous, dude. This is actual insanity. A +10 is a guaranteed win. There's no chance he loses. Although, I know in Michigan, I think he got close. But, with 2020. But this is actual insanity. So a Harris +1 is not like, oh, he's going to win. Because Trump is going to outperform his numbers by like 2 to 3 points is what it looks like. Could be, it depends on where he's at. So prior, I think he was at like 44, 45 in the polls in 2020, and then he outperformed by like, I can't remember if he outperformed by 2, like somewhere like 2 to 5 points. But if he's already at 47, I think he's probably outperforms by 2 points. He gets like 49. So if you're +1, that doesn't mean you're really in the lead in these states. Georgia looks like you only need to be up like 2 points maybe, depending kind of how things turn out, because Biden was up just 1.2 points in the aggregate for Georgia. So Georgia polling somehow ended up being like more accurate, at least in the swing numbers. But Biden outperformed his numbers by 1 from the polling numbers on election day. He actually outperformed. Again, Georgia, I think, is a heavy turnout state, right? He very heavily, he also, like a 1% outperformance is big, and I think Trump outperformed by 2, and so he was still able to win. He was up by 1 in the polls, 1.2. He outperforms his numbers by 1, giving him a 2-point lead, and then Trump barely misses, right? Just barely, right? This is the benefit of Josh Shapiro. The negative is he's more conservative, but he can legitimately win you the election just by winning Pennsylvania alone. And this is supposed to be a big boost for whoever the vice president is. Okay, like, can you win me a swing state, right? Because the swing state is going to determine the election. I'm telling you right now, if the Democrats win Pennsylvania, they win the election. There's no way they win Penn and don't win Michigan and Wisconsin. Or even I think if they win Michigan and Wisconsin, there's some kind of other combination they could use to win, right? Like Georgia can eat Georgia can eat any of the swing states, actually, because I think Penn is 16, Wisconsin 15, and Michigan is 10, I believe. I could be wrong. But Georgia can eat any of those 3. So that can kind of subsidize. And then also Nevada can play a role as well if you're able to pick that up too. Arizona, I think, is just out of the question. Even Mark Kelly is losing, so I just don't see how it's possible. Even Kelly's losing. So I think that's kind of the tough part. The only problem is the Democratic Party is a monarchy now, so whoever is the vice president now is the default next nominee. The voters are just going to rubber stamp them, not even going to have a real election or vote or anything like that. Just start off default support from being the vice president, and boom, you're the nominee now. Nobody really voted for you. Or you just get cooed and you're just placed in the next one, right? Like what happened with Kamala, right? That's the danger. I'm really concerned about, like, fuck, I don't want to choose somebody who's the vice president who's more conservative. Like Tim Walz is by far, like if you're just looking at it as like the most progressive person, not even close as Tim Walz, and not even close. But from an electoral standpoint, you need, so there's kind of three groups that you need in this election if you want to win. You need suburban white women voters. You need blue-collar workers in the swing states, and then I think you need the suburban white women in states like Georgia and those kinds of states, and then you need young people to have a much higher turnout, more comparable to 2020 versus 2016. I think Kamala's kind of going to be able to get the young vote no matter what, I feel like. So I think the ability to expand there is pretty low, I think, and I think she'll be able to handle that unless she really butchers Israel-Palestine bad. But even that isn't the biggest issue for young people. It just kind of is on Twitter. According to polls, a poll I read said that like 50% said that it was the economy. So, and the Israel-Palestine didn't come that close. And so those are the three groups you need. So Josh Shapiro kind of gives you this big thing in Pennsylvania. I don't know how he impacts those other groups. I think she also has on lock the white women suburban voters because I think Roe versus Wade is going to get rolled out. And I think J.D. Vance kind of turns into like a Super Saiyan Roe versus Wade or like a stim, or I don't know if any of you guys played like a StarCraft before, but like you play Terra and like you can stim pack your Marines. That makes some Marines weaker, so maybe not a good comparison. But the point being, like J.D. Vance being there makes it even more salient. I saw an abortion poll recently. I was like, damn, this is a salient issue, dude. Crazy salience, dude. So, but that just makes it even more salient because you can really tether it. And then also his ties to Project 2025 makes him really weak, right? Those are all really good things. Those are all strategies here. I don't see Mark Kelly doesn't give you shit. I don't think he gives you dog shit, right? Tim Walz, he gives you the progressive bona fides. How much impact does that have? I think it's pretty minimal because I think Kamala is going to get pretty close to maxing out the youth vote already. Just out of naturality of just the kind of replacement of Biden, and then people are really excited about Kamala for some reason. And then Shapiro can just straight up win you. The danger is he's a more conservative dude, so it's not going to be, but I want to say he's not like super clean cut, like super conservative or anything. So at the end of the day, I think the overall pick probably, because we're trying to prevent fascism and the victory of Trump, you'd have to go with Shapiro, even though Tim Walz is the more progressive person. But the thing is, how much is that really going to help you? I don't think it's going to help you that much. And then also, I just think that we kind of already get what we have with Tim Walz. The progressivism might come more with Tim Walz, but we're trying to beat Trump right now. It's kind of more electoral strategy versus, it's kind of like more like a real politics situation versus anything you really believe on politics. But from a strictly electoral standpoint, in my humble opinion, based on everything we know, I would say Shapiro is the best pick. If you just want the most progressive candidate, obviously far and away Walz. And I have no idea what Mark Kelly brings to the table. I mean, he's losing to Trump in his own state, which is embarrassing. He has the union issue, and I don't know what he brings to the table. It's like, man, Kelly's really going to do X. What? I don't know. Like, you'd be like, oh, he's going to win AZ for you. But he's losing in AZ. Josh Shapiro's up by 10 in the Fox News poll. And he seems to neuter Trump is the weird part. Like, he seems to neutralize Trump. If you look at these numbers, it's like he's actually, like, Trump is polling the lowest pretty much in these polls compared to almost anybody else in these polls here, right? So it's kind of like, whoa, like he's actually kind of neutering him a bit. So I think that Josh Shapiro is the best pick if you want to win. If you want the most progressive person, is Tim Walz. I would say just like fuck it, go with Shapiro. If the party wasn't a monarchy, I would just be like Shapiro easy, because then we can just vote in a progressive for the nomination next time. But the problem is, the party is a monarchy now, so whoever is the vice president now is the default nominee next time. That's it. It's a coronation. It's a crowning. Even like the voters or the delegates are going to rubber stamp the crown. They're going to give him the crown, kind of like fucking Napoleon used to get or whatever. So that's my only concern. If that concern didn't exist, if we had like a real Democratic Party where you could really run fair elections and actually run, voters were open-minded, the DNC didn't have their finger on the poll, finger on the their thumb on the scale and stuff like that, I would be like Shapiro easy money. That's the only concern that I have. That's the only concern that I have. And I don't think Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to differ that much. I think Kamala Harris is probably going to be pretty progressive. I honestly don't really know. She's kind of hard to pin down. But those are the vibes that I get. And she did support a lot of progressive policies back in 2020, at least ostensibly so. So, yeah, we'll have to see. But I think Josh Shapiro easily, if you're just talking about just winning the election, Tim Walz if you want the most progressive, and then I don't know what Mark Kelly does for you, buddy.